You want to buy a house. You look at the price, you look at your bank account, and you realize you're about $400,000 short. So, you go to a bank. The bank tells you the interest rate is 7%. You do the math and realize you'll end up paying the bank double the price of the house over 30 years just for the privilege of sleeping indoors. You're annoyed. You blame the guy at the desk. You blame the local housing market. You blame your boss for not paying you more. But the truth is, the reason your life just got significantly more expensive wasn't decided in your city. It was decided by a handful of people in a bland conference room in Washington, D.C., who decided to raise the rates. These people are the central bankers. They are the most powerful individuals you've never met, and they control the cost of your entire existence. If you don't understand how they think, you are just a passenger on a ship being steered by people who don't care if you get seasick. A central bank isn't a normal bank. You can't open a checking account there. You can't get a debit card with their logo on it. Think of a central bank as the banker's bank. In the US, it's the Federal Reserve, the Fed. In Europe, it's the ECB. Their job is to manage a nation's currency, oversee the banking system, and, most importantly, set monetary policy. Monetary policy is just a fancy way of saying how much money is floating around and how much does it cost to borrow it. The central bank has one main goal: keep the economy from exploding or freezing. They do this primarily by moving the interest rate. Imagine the economy is a car. When the central bank lowers interest rates, they are pushing the gas pedal. It becomes cheap to borrow money. When it's cheap to borrow, businesses take out loans to build factories, and you take out a loan to buy a brand new truck. Everyone is spending, everyone is hiring, and the vibe is great. This is easy money. But if the car goes too fast, it overheats. This is called inflation. If everyone has easy access to cash, we all start bidding against each other for the same stuff. The price of that brand new truck goes from $50,000 to $70,000 because the dealership knows everyone has cheap loan money. To stop this, the central bank hits the brakes. They raise interest rates. Now, borrowing money is expensive. You decide to keep your old car. Businesses stop hiring. Spending slows down. The vibe gets depressing. This is tight money. To keep this simple, let's talk about that brand new truck. We're going to use this truck to explain every complex move the Fed makes. Whether you can afford the monthly payment on that truck or whether the dealership even has it in stock is almost entirely dependent on what the central bank did this morning. In the US, the Fed has two specific jobs, often called the dual mandate. First, maximum employment. They want as many people working as possible. Second, price stability. They want to keep inflation around 2%. They are essentially trying to balance a seesaw. If they help the job market too much by keeping rates low, prices skyrocket. If they fight inflation too hard by raising rates, people lose their jobs. It's a constant high-stakes guessing game. In the US, the Fed has two specific jobs, often called the dual mandate. First, maximum employment. They want as many people working as possible. Second, price stability. They want to keep inflation around 2%. They are essentially trying to balance a seesaw. If they help the job market too much by keeping rates low, prices skyrocket. If they fight inflation too hard by raising rates, people lose their jobs. It's a constant high-stakes guessing game. Banks make money on the spread, the difference between what they pay for money and what they charge you. If the central bank sets the rate at 5%, your bank will charge you 8%. They take the 3% cut for the service of existing. This is why when the Fed moves their rate by even 0.25%, the entire world feels it. It changes the math for every single loan on the planet. Central banks also control the money supply. They don't actually go to a literal printing press and start cranking out Benjamins, though it's a funny mental image. Instead, they use something called open market operations. If they want more money in the economy, they buy government bonds from banks. They pay for these bonds by essentially typing numbers into the bank's digital account. Boom! New money created out of thin air. The bank now has more cash to lend to you for your brand new truck. When things get really bad, like the 2008 crash or 2020, the central bank uses a bazooka called quantitative easing. This is just money printing on steroids. They buy up massive amounts of assets to flood the system with cash and keep interest rates near zero. This makes the stock market go up because cash is trash, and everyone wants to put their money where it will actually grow. But it also creates asset bubbles, where things like houses and stocks become disconnected from reality. When inflation rears up, the central bank uses a big tool called the rates. Central banks lend money to commercial banks at a specific rate. When they raise that rate, it makes it harder to get money. This cools down the economy and people stop spending so much. The key is to find the right balance, because if they raise rates too much, they could easily cause a recession, which is a technical term for when the economy shrinks and everyone loses their job. Inflation is the central bank's greatest enemy. Think of inflation as a leak in your gas tank. If inflation is 10%, your $100 is only worth $90 next year. Central banks hate high inflation because it makes people stop saving and start panic buying. If you know that brand new truck will cost $5,000 more next month, you'll buy it today. This creates a wage price spiral where prices go up, so workers demand more pay, which causes prices to go up again. When the Fed realizes they've hit the brakes too hard and the economy is about to crash into a recession, they perform a pivot. They stop raising rates and start cutting them. Investors love the pivot. It's like the teacher leaving the classroom and saying everyone gets an A. The stock market usually rallies, and suddenly that brand new truck looks affordable again. But if they pivot too early, inflation comes back like a zombie. Central banks are designed to be independent so they can be the adult in the room who takes away the punch bowl just when the party gets good. To understand how the central bank controls the vibe, you have to understand fractional reserve banking. When you put $1,000 in the bank, they don't keep it in a vault. They are only required to keep a small fraction, the reserve, and they lend the rest out. If the reserve requirement is 10%, they lend $900 of your money to someone else to buy, you guessed it, parts for a brand new truck. In a crisis, everyone panics and tries to pull their money out of banks at the same time. This is a bank run. Since the bank lent your money out for trucks and houses, they don't have it. The central bank steps in as the lender of last resort. They provide emergency cash to keep the banks from collapsing. Moral hazard is when you take big risks because you know someone will bail you out if you fail. Because the central bank always saves the big banks, those banks often take stupid risks with your money. They know if they win, they get bonuses. If they lose, the central bank prints money to save them. It's heads I win, tails you lose. Here is the blunt truth. Central bank policy usually helps the rich first. When the Fed prints money or lowers rates, asset prices, stocks, real estate, luxury goods go up. Who owns those things? Rich people. Meanwhile, the guy working for an hourly wage sees his rent go up and the price of a brand new truck go up, but his paycheck stays the same. The central bank is currently trying to achieve a soft landing. This is when they raise rates just enough to stop inflation, but not so much that they cause a massive recession. A hard landing is when the economy enters a tailspin, unemployment spikes, and you lose your job and can't even pay for the gas in your brand new truck. The U.S. Federal Reserve is essentially the central bank of the world because the U.S. dollar is the world reserve currency. When the Fed raises rates, it doesn't just affect Americans, it makes the dollar stronger. This sounds good, but it makes it harder for other countries to pay back their debts. Everything the central bank does is based on the fact that we use fiat currency. Fiat is Latin for "let it be done." Our money isn't backed by gold or silver, it's backed by nothing but faith and credit in the government. The central bank's entire job is to maintain your faith in those little green pieces of paper. Central banks generally dislike physical cash. Cash is hard to track and hard to tax via negative interest rates. Many central banks are now developing CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. This would give them even more control. Imagine a world where the central bank could prevent you from buying a brand new truck because you've reached your carbon limit for the month. A huge part of a central banker's job is just talking. This is called forward guidance. They hold press conferences to tell you what they plan to do in 6 months. If they tell the world we plan to keep rates high for a long time, businesses start cutting costs immediately. They move the entire economy just by using their words. The central bank is the invisible hand in your wallet. They aren't evil, but they aren't your friends either. They are technocrats trying to manage a chaotic system using very blunt tools. They move the rates, which moves the market, which moves your life. If this made you feel like a tiny pawn in a global game of chess, hit the like button. Subscribe if you want to understand the rules of the game before you go broke. And leave a comment letting me know what asset bubble you think is going to pop first. Stay sharp. Moving on.